So, do we call this subgenre Little Horror on the Prairie or Little House on the Scary? Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. As part of my coverage of the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival, today I'm going to be talking about the 2024 psychological horror thriller, Hold Your Breath. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All of my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Hold Your Breath stars Sarah Paulson, Amiah Miller, and Alona Jane Robbins, and was co-directed by Karrie, Crouse, and Will Joines. Set in 1930s Oklahoma, it tells the story of a woman and her two daughters who fear that a supernatural presence may be stalking them in the dust storms that envelop their home. Every genre inevitably stirs up reactions from people, but time and time again, horror seems to be the most fought about genre, including infighting between fans. There are a lot of reasons for this. Not only is fear a very personal and subjective thing that doesn't manifest in exactly the same way for any two people, but there's also about 1 million different horror subgenres that each approach this fear in vastly different ways. Arguments about horror movies often devolve into complaints about a film not being scary, which is kind of silly in and of itself, because I think horror fans inherently rarely find themselves legitimately scared by the movies they watch, instead enjoying the genre for its excitement, entertainment, and sometimes thought-provoking social commentary. But as with any genre, horror movies can start to feel a little too similar to one another, leaving fans searching for something new and different. So, Hold Your Breath, with its Dust Bowl ghost story premise, certainly sounded like an intriguing option. It features a unique temporal setting and a mishmash of horror genres, ranging from supernatural horror to home invasion thriller to psychological horror. The premise does appear to be new and inviting for slow burn horror fans. It's just too bad that it's not nearly as fresh or unique as it seemed. Hold Your Breath is a movie that I find myself a bit torn on, because in spite of some issues, it does have some strong components. One of these strengths is its atmosphere. The early 1930s Oklahoma setting gives this film an interesting and fairly eerie starting point. I think we often associate forests with outdoor horror, but the open plains are just as unsettling and isolating. This is, of course, compounded here by the Dust Bowl, with blinding dust storms frequently whipping up, threatening to consume anybody and anything in their path. Most of the movie's tension lies with these storms. The sound design and visuals greatly contribute to the film's overall atmosphere, putting the characters and us amid howling winds, unable to see more than a few feet ahead and relying on ropes as literal lifelines. The dust is actually an interesting stand-in for another horror movie standard, darkness. In both cases, we don't know what's out there, just out of sight. It could be anything, and when the dust itself could be part of a supernatural presence, it becomes even more unsettling. The dust storms take on a dual role here, effective as their own pulse-pounding entities, as well as a convenient and isolating means of concealing and compounding other physical and psychological threats. So why doesn't this film work as well as its premise would lead you to believe? The fault mostly lies with the story itself. Again, like the film as a whole, the story here does have some strong elements. The folk horror style ghost story about the gray man, the physical and supernatural threat of the dust storms, the psychological aspects fueled by grief and paranoia, it all mixes together in a way that makes it ambiguously difficult to discern who or what the threat actually is. But in this way, the film goes for too much. There are too many story elements too loosely stitched together. The links are there enough to keep things coherent, but they're not strong enough to withstand the whipping winds of the storms. The subgenre transitions will likely leave many fans disappointed in the end. Admittedly, some of the sudden genre shifts will be a bit unexpected for people, but within each of the genres, the supernatural, psychological, and home invasion segments, the well-worn story paths and familiar tropes shine through even the darkest dust storm. It's not that the story is overtly bad, it's just constructed from things we've seen many times before in slightly less dusty settings. With the progressively waning tension and overly familiar story beats, it could be tough for some people to remain invested throughout this slow burn horror thriller. Some will find this to be the case regardless, but Sarah Paulson certainly does her best to overcome this and elevate the film. Whether you think she manages to salvage it or not, there's no doubt that this film would have struggled to find its way through the dust without a star like Paulson there to throw it a lifeline. She's become a bit of a go-to horror actor, both in film and television, and this is exactly the type of role she excels in. To be fair, Paulson doesn't have the best material to work with here, but she delivers an extremely committed performance, ranging from door-locking timid to blood-smearing unhinged. She greatly elevates the psychological elements of this film, and while it's not enough to make it a great movie, it is enough to make it impossible to dismiss the film as purely average. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 is the atmosphere. Although this may not be the most atmospheric slow burn horror movie out there, it is much more effective at capturing its own atmospheric style than you would expect. The 1930s Dust Bowl setting is a unique and strong choice for a horror thriller, and is used to great effect here. The dust storms in particular contribute to this, serving as both an isolating factor and a tension-building one. There's a sense of panicked dread during the impending approach of each storm, and when they actually hit, the roaring sound design and impairing visual effects only add to the tension. There's a sense of unknown to these storms, with the characters and audience fearful of what supernatural or physical threats may lurk within, and what effect they may have on the characters in the choking, dust-covered aftermath. The second pro is Sarah Paulson. The other performances are decent here, including the child performances, but it's Sarah Paulson's turn as Margaret that really drives the story. A character that initially appears averagely straightforward becomes something much more complex as information and history come to light, and as she and her children face more wide-ranging threats. Existing Paulson fans already know the type of horror performance they can expect from her, but newcomers may be surprised by just how ranging and intense she gets here, especially as the psychological elements of the story really begin to take shape. On the con side, the biggest issue is the story. Don't get me wrong, there are elements of the story that I think really work. Its individual subgenre story pieces are interesting on their own, and some of them work together, but Hold Your Breath tries to do too much with too underdeveloped of a narrative. It feels like a series of interesting story ideas that somebody mistakenly tried to jam into a single screenplay, and in order to do so, they opted to cut corners a bit with overused tropes and extremely familiar storylines. There's nothing wrong with the film showing its influences, and the story pieces here aren't bad. They just seem to overestimate how much the Dust Bowl setting would be able to set this film apart, which, as it turns out, is not by very much. Before I give you my rating recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Hold Your Breath or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Hold Your Breath 3 out of 5 paws. It's a Dust Bowl ghost story that chokes the audience with atmospheric tension as much as it does with dust. Sarah Paulson gives an extremely committed performance, but this very familiar type of ambiguous, psychologically paranoid story needed a little bit more than just dust storms to set it apart. I would recommend Hold Your Breath to people looking for a familiar, slow-burn psychological horror with a unique setting. If you're expecting the Dust Bowl setting to provide you with a completely fresh take on the genre, you'll likely be a bit disappointed. But it does add an intriguing new coat of paint to a story you've seen before. And if you enjoy Sarah Paulson in horror roles, you probably don't need me to tell you that this is one you should check out, if only for her performance. If you liked Hold Your Breath, I would recommend The Others. This is another atmospheric period horror film that ambiguously blurs the lines between supernatural and psychological horror. Nicole Kidman gives a strong and progressively unstable performance as a mother who's convinced a presence is after her children. If you'd like something a bit more recent, you might want to watch Never Let Go. This is another story about a mother fighting to protect her children, in which the nature of the threat, supernatural, physical, or psychological, is up for debate. Despite the more typical forest setting, this film also relies heavily on the concept of a rope attached to the house being used as a lifeline. If you're in the mood for something more thriller than horror, you should check out Whiteout. Like Hold Your Breath, it follows some extremely familiar plot beats and doesn't have the most developed story, but the isolated Antarctic setting, whiteout blizzards, and use of lifelines during the climax contribute to the tension and excitement. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Hold Your Breath? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's another unique time period you'd like to see a horror movie set during? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.